What's happening, everybody? On today's show, we're going to run through some SEC headlines with our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast. And we're going to take a very early peek at the SEC Week 5 games. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And a reminder, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. All right, we do it every week around this time. Let's bring in our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast. Marler, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Just trying to get myself ready for October and this hurricane, even though I'm in Atlanta. I definitely I'm gonna just probably build that up on my Facebook and make sure my mom thinks that I'm okay with the mark safe button and all that. But other than that, now I hate this weekend because it happens every year. Like, if you remember like the 2015 Bama Georgia game with like the monsoon, like that was this weekend. It seems like there's always the first weekend of October gets ruined from some stupid hurricane. But I'm hoping that is not the case with some of these big games.
Well, let's jump into it. We're going to debut a new segment, SEC Headlines.
Stand by for news.
Now, SEC Headlines.
How's that for production value?
That was a lot, yeah. That was a whole bunch.
All right, let me fade out this music because that's unnecessary. Let's jump into it, Marlo. We'll start with our first SEC headline. The games are going to be moved. Hurricane Ian is expected to hit Florida this weekend. Already plans are being made. Moving games. South Carolina is going to move their Week 5 matchup against South Carolina State from Saturday to Thursday night. It's going to be 7 Eastern at Williams-Brice Stadium. And the SEC Network still going to carry the game, so that's cool. We'll get to still be able to watch it. And then Florida changing their schedule, too. They're moving their game against Eastern Washington to Sunday at noon Eastern, so we get a little Florida primer an hour before the NFL kickoffs on Sunday. But I'll pose this question. Is it right to move the games rather than either postpone or cancel them? Because it feels a little weird where it's like, hey, South Carolina, I know you guys are worried about flooding and maybe boarding up your houses, but let's get this game in Thursday night. Concession workers, come on over. Let's go.
I mean, so like my family lives in Columbia, so I don't. It's not as bad in Columbia. It'll rain. There might be some flooding, but it won't be as bad. I will say that doesn't speak for the rest of the state and people have to travel. And always, it is called the Low Country there for a reason. Some of that area, but in the Midlands, they should be fine. And I do think the biggest thing when you look at this, like from like just taking a step back, this is a huge payday for Eastern Washington. It's a huge payday for South Carolina State. It's also probably means a little bit more to a team like South Carolina State. Now, Eastern Washington, who's already played Oregon and got their brains beat in, flying all the way across the country just so people can, it'll probably be a half-filled stadium. It'll still be hot as shit. Like, that'll be probably miserable for them. The South Carolina thing, I love the fact that they're still doing as much as possible to make sure that like the economy isn't hit super hard, like from missing like a home weekend and all that good stuff. Because, late in the season, I don't know if people are going to be going to this game unless you did it like after, like if you did it the first weekend of December and neither one of these teams were playing for the SEC championship, which probably isn't going to be the case.
South Carolina's not playing for the
neither is Florida, to be honest.
Neither is Florida. All right, next headline. During his media availability on Monday, Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin was asked about fan support in Oxford, and he took a shot at fans. He said, look, regardless of what you come out to before the game or at a halftime, when you come back out and you run out of the tunnel, it looks like a high school game being played at College Stadium. You can't let that affect you. There's a psychology to it. So I ask you, Marler, the home slate for Ole Miss this year is featured games against Troy, Central Arkansas,
exactly.
and Tulsa. Should Lane keep his mouth shut and just, schedule tougher home games?
Yeah, great minds right here, man. Because that was my first thought too. Was like I immediately started clicking on CFB stats to look up who their home games were. Troy, Central Arkansas. You played a road game, and you have Tulsa. This is homecoming, and it's the first week of October, which feels a little bit weird. Usually, when I think of homecoming at Ole Miss, I always think of Vineyard Vine Vest, no matter what. When I think of Ole Miss, but it still might be too hot for that. I mean, look at like even last year, you had a non-con game against Louisville and Atlanta. You had Austin Peay and Tulane at home as well. Yeah, that's more so on him for trying to schedule better, better opponents, especially in the non-con slate. But also, if you're Ole Miss, man, like you went through some bad seasons, right? Like you went through some bad seasons, and even with some good talent on that team, why would you not be wanting to show up at least early on for some of these games? Like the Tulsa game, it's hard to get excited about Tulsa, but here's the other thing too. I think I saw a tweet today that said like 10 of the 14 SEC teams have had 96% or better stadium capacity. And home attendance this year. And even Bama's on there. And it's not like Bama's played a great home schedule. And I'm not comparing those two programs necessarily, but like if Auburn fans are showing up, if Bama fans are showing up for Auburn has no reason to show up. Like honestly, at any point for that program. But yeah, I mean, just show up and support the team, man. Or I tell you what, you don't want to have is you don't want to lose Kiffin because of it, Yeah.
Well, also, I think Saban threatened to kick fans' asses if they left games early. He's like, you better be.
Yeah, like literally though, like he was going to kick you. Like that was like your gift as a parting gift on the way out. It was a kick in the ass from him.
And look, these Lane Kiffin years, enjoy them, right? Because we could always go back to Matt Luke.
Matt Luke.
I just wanted you to do a Matt Luke impression. All right, another headline. Will Anderson, this is kind of in the same realm. Will Anderson told reporters Tuesday that he finds it disrespectful that opposing fans and opposing players even show up when he's on the field. Why bother? He said Alabama's goal is for opposing fans to leave the stadium before the third quarter. So I ask you, is it too ambitious to try to send fans home by halftime? Third quarter I get, fourth quarter I get, but like halftime we want to send you home? Come on.
I mean, we're not that far away from, first off, this comment, like no matter how it's taken from opposing fans or national media or whatever, it made my nipples harder than a 9th grade algebra test. It was incredible. I love that from Will Anderson. I love how the defense looks so far this year. He hasn't jumped off sides in 2 weeks, which is great. I don't think, but no, like we're not that far removed from you remember like the Tua days, like not the show, but Tua, the quarterback. I mean, they were, yeah, exactly. I mean, they were sending people home in the first quarter at times back then. So I don't think any of the 2020 season, they jumped and on people early and routed them. I love this mentality. Now we'll get into a little bit later when we break down the game about just how different those numbers prove to be from like reality versus what he said. But yeah, I love that's the goal.
Another headline, Luther Burden did not receive a single touch on offense for Missouri in their devastating loss at Auburn on Saturday. Drew a lot of criticism. Tuesday, Eli Drinkwitz gave an update on Burden, said he was injured in the second quarter, and said after that point, his only job was to field punts because he still fielded punts after that. I ask you, Marler, is Eli Drinkwitz BSing us?
I don't know, but he better not be, because outside of injury, there's no excuse for why this kid's not getting the football. We saw it in week one, and he was the only highlight against who they play in week one. They played Louisiana Tech, and it seemed like he was the only highlight. He only had 3 catches in that game. Like, what are we doing if he is not the offense? And it's hard for me to look at a game, especially like the one they played against Auburn, where you got beat by a team who had 217 total yards and gave you every single possible chance to win that game. And they're like, no, I'm good. That was like watching 2 people at a 4-way stop that were like both like no. Like for like, but if that expended for an hour and a half or 2 hours, it's all that was. So it's just 12 inching forward,
right? Back to back punts. Yeah.
Yes, Auburn had opened up with 2 scoring drives in their first 2 possessions and didn't score the rest of the game, and had 6. Like their next 8. Or their next 10 possessions were 8 punts and like 2 turnover on downs or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, if you're Mizzou, just give that kid the ball. He should be the focal point of the offense. Like we make this comment about Anthony Richardson, they're going to go as far as he'll take him, and he's a quarterback, so it makes more sense that way. What else do you have if you're Mizzou? You don't even have a kicker anymore.
Yeah, you had Nathaniel Pete, and then he fumbled at the 1, and you can't really rely on that. By the way, Luther Burden after this game scrubbed his social media, took everything Mizzou off it. Well, he later tweeted out, Mizzou fans, please don't misunderstand my intentions. I'm always a Tiger. Just be patient. Here we come. Day and age of the transfer portal. Look, you got to have a couple bad games. These kids are very quick to go. I'm done with you. I am out. But Luther Burden staying put for the time being. One more headline, Marler. I don't know if you saw this, but they're working on the new EA Sports video game, and they're asking schools to send us, hey, what songs do you want from your band on like first down, second down, and all this.
Yeah.
And the report came out that LSU is not going to use Neck They did not request it. Is LSU making a mistake not using neck in the upcoming video game?
It's a mistake every time neck is not played and not taken advantage of being played. It is the best song. I love Dixieland Delight. I love Won't Back Down. I love when Georgia comes out to wow, I almost just committed a cardinal sin and called it Teenage Wasteland. But Bob O'Reilly, I love all that. Neck is awesome. Neck is awesome. And Sandstorm is another one. But like Neck, it's just such a beautiful like symphony from just drunk ass LSU fans that it's almost like it's so aggressively obscene that it almost is canceled out because of how aggressively obscene the people singing it are. Like, no, it's not that bad. You think about these people; they've said much worse today.
When I was in school, they played it and it was ba 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 da ba.
Yeah,
and that was it. It was Neck. It wasn't STTDB, which is what it evolved into, and now people love it.
Can't have nice things.
Especially 12-year-old boys. They really enjoy that. All right.
Say that.
When we when we return here on the Locked On SEC podcast, we're going to get to previewing the games this weekend with our buddy Chris Marler. Hang tight just 1 second. First, need to remind you about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is the place you need to go to get all your information throughout the college football betting season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles. Every Friday right here on the show, we give you all the latest BetOnline odds for all the SEC games heading into the weekend. It's the fastest and easiest way for you to check in on all your favorite games and events, every sport, including all the betting odds out there for all the college football games heading into the weekend. Head to betonline.net to use it on your mobile device. You can learn more. It is BetOnline, and it is where the game starts. Go check it out today. Continue on with our buddy Chris Marler. And Marler, we head into SEC Week 5, and I figure we'll get some of the less exciting games out of the way here first. I want to start, and by the way, Tennessee and Vandy both get buys this week. Vandy, much needed after getting beat down by Alabama. Tennessee, much needed after, oh God, is it going to happen again? Is Florida going to come back and beat us? They get the win.
That's tough.
But let's start with the Thursday night game. It's 2-2 South Carolina hosting 1-2 South Carolina State. We mentioned moving to Thursday because of the hurricane. It's going to be on SEC Network. I watched a little bit of South Carolina this week. They got the run game back going. Marshawn Lloyd looked good. For South Carolina, man, just kind of, like, can you kind of get better? Can we get Spencer Rattler a little bit better? Because he's not good so far.
No, there were some positives, I think, from this. And you talked about, like, the run game going. I did a deep dive on this on Sunday, and they put up 50 points. They put up 500 yards of offense, and they put up 295 yards on the ground. That's the most they've had, like, in rushing offense, I think, in the last 3 seasons. It's the most offensive total yards they've had or maybe the second most since, like, 2019. And that 50-plus points, that's only the second time. This is going to blow your mind. This is only the second time since 2013 that they have put up over 50 points in a game. And it was this past weekend. So I think there's a lot of positives from that standpoint. For me, and I love the fact they got the ground game going, I don't think the ground game is going to be something you can depend on just because of that offensive line when you play SEC teams. I will say that Spencer Rattler completing 70% of his passes. That's a big deal because he was a 70% completion percentage quarterback, like career-wise, at OU. And also I think it was like 10 of his 16 starts he threw for over 70%. That kind of stuff I think is more important. The most important thing for me is the same shit I said last week. Just put somebody away in the first half. Why are you struggling with Charlotte? Why are you struggling with Georgia State? Like, these teams have been really bad in every other game they've played, and yet against you early on, they look like, like, I don't want to say the Titans because the Titans are also bad, but Titans in general,
I'd be curious to know what Rattler's completion or yards per completion is, though. If he's completing that high percentage, man, it must be like 4 or 5 yards of completion.
Yeah.
We'll look that up later. 1-2 Eastern Washington is going to be at 2-2 in Florida on Sunday morning. We mentioned moving with the hurricane. The big positive, I mean, like, it was funny, Marler, after losing this rivalry game, I don't think I've met more Florida fans who were like, hey, not bad. Hey,
yeah,
interested, look pretty good. Like, you hate moral victories, but that was a good moral victory for Florida.
Yeah, what's up with everyone saying they don't like moral victories? Some moral victories are okay. I'm very confused as to how everyone, like Eli Drinkwitz was talking about it today, Sam Pittman was talking about it. Like, some of these programs, like, I'm not saying that, especially with Arkansas, that you should love a moral victory, but I mean, at some point, especially with how immoral the SEC can be, you know what I mean?
Sometimes they say they go to I don't care if we win ugly, just win. You think Auburn's celebrating that win on Saturday? No. Winning
They
ugly.
did. Their fans didn't. The team did. Did you see them in the locker room?
Yeah.
They were. I mean, that's a tough scene. I mean, like I will say, I'm not trying to be like Dan Mullen here. I do think you celebrate wins in your life in general and like try to stay positive as much as possible. This is different though, and it's not what a majority of fans want to see or what they expect from some of these teams. If you're Florida, I thought like they could like. Here's what I hang on to with this game, and this is like when you watch that team when they were down by 17 plus points, and I hated it as somebody that had Tennessee to cover and thought, the game was over. The fact that team didn't roll over and die, still came back, got a stop on fourth down, got a touchdown and had a chance at an onside kick, which they recovered. Like the fact that they didn't roll over and die, which is something we did not see from Dan Mullen's teams a year ago. That was huge. And so whatever you want to call it, moral victory or whatever, I thought it was really impressive.
Yeah, it feels weird to give a team credit. Hey, they didn't quit, but you're right. That Florida team did quit multiple times last year under Mullen. Saturday night, 6:30 Eastern on the SEC Network. It is number 1 Georgia at 2-2 Mizzou, and poor Eli Drinkwitz. It just keeps getting tougher. Georgia a little sleepwalky, I guess is what I call the performance against Kent State, but I expect they're going to show back up and show out this week.
I would think so. I mean, it was great for a lot of reasons, mainly because you got to hear their fans shut up a little bit on social media, which I loved. But also the fact that team, like this is the kind of stuff that you want to see if you're Kirby Smart. And he even mentioned in the postgame, like the, interview or press conference, like they didn't punt once, right? They still have the fewest punts in the SEC. I mean, you look at the numbers, they put up over 500 yards of offense. They had 3 turnovers. There were several things that like, there were absolute, not mismatches, but like there was a big difference in some of those stat numbers. I will say the concerning part is it's not the 50-yard touchdown pass that you gave up, right? It's that you had multiple 12 plus play drives that went for almost 70 yards. So Kent State sustaining drives, that part is a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, and Brock Bowers still unguardable. I don't know why they don't just throw him every down.
Every down.
The other night game, and this will be the last. We'll get into the bigger games in the next segment. But 6 p.m. Central on ESPN. It is 3-1 LSU at 3-1 Auburn. Talk about just 2 programs like going in opposite directions. Like LSU feeling pretty good about themselves, getting better every week. The Madhouse defense looking really good, and Auburn seemingly playing worse every week. They got to win this past week, but man, I think I saw Marler like right on Saturday night. The line first came out; it was Auburn -1. It then went to LSU -7, and now it's up to LSU -9. Like I've never seen a line move this.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you haven't seen it.
Oh, damn it. I should have jumped all over that. I saw it at 3 and I was like, that's weird. That 3.5, maybe I think my dumbass overthought it was like 3.5. What's up with that hook? I don't know if I can trust that. No, LSU, I love this because there's so much confirmation bias that we're desperately trying to see from like teams like early on in the season, and we're trying to hold on to these like ideas, like the whole thing about like Texas they're not any good and blah, blah, blah. I still maintain the fact that team, like they've lost 2 games by 4 total points without their starting quarterback. But like in the same breath, you talk about an LSU team that like the sky was falling in Baton Rouge early on. I saw fans saying like, if I'm LSU, I'm like, I can't believe we lost that game, but at least there were positive signs. But you almost lost to Florida State. Well, now Florida State's 4-0, right? You lost by 1 point on, yeah. And if you're LSU, where I love this, especially from a betting standpoint, like a 10-point favorite is probably not even nearly enough. Jaden Daniels has been fantastic. I mean, the competition hasn't been great, but it's his 3rd game out of 4 total where he's had 300 plus yards of offense with no interceptions. He only had 3 games like that all last season. So he's done that very early on here. The defense has been fantastic. They've jumped on people early. I think in the last 2 home games, I think you guys, or besides Mississippi State, you jumped out to like 80-something to nothing at the half. This is a Power 5 team, obviously, and it's a conference rival. But I mean, they're outscoring opponents 41-7 in the 4th quarter this year. Is LSU, and Auburn is been under Brian Harsin specifically has been the worst second half coach in the country since he's become a head coach. That's factually true. That is factually true that they are getting outscored in the second half on an average of like 11 points in their last like 6 or 7 Power 5 games. LSU will cover this, and they will most likely put him out of his misery.
And by the way, LSU in the top 20 in the country in a lot of defensive categories,
Yeah.
only behind Bama and Georgia. So literally,
Right.
you're the third best SEC defense right now. So we'll see.
And the offense is right behind Ole Miss.
Yeah. So we're going to see more with Chris Marler in just a second. We'll get into the big games happening this weekend in the SEC. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Just go to their website. You can add your job with the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills you want to look at. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege and post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, rolling along here with Chris Marler of the College Football Uncensored podcast. Marler, we got to get into the three big SEC on SEC games happening this weekend, and we'll start 11 a.m. Central on ESPN. I wish this was a night game in the Grove, but number 7 Kentucky at number 14 Ole Miss. Chris Rodriguez coming back for Kentucky, but man, that Ole Miss ground game has been so dominant. Quinshon Judkins, just a 3-star running back that had offers from all over the SEC. Who knew with Zach Evans and Ulysses Bentley coming in that he would be the featured back, really?
So I don't think he is the featured back necessarily. I do think that there's a lot of weapons on this offense that Kiffin is still trying to figure out how to, disperse some of the touches to. I mean, Evans is your best player. It's not close, right? Evans is your best player. Trigg might be after that.
Evans is that better than Judkins, though? I think they've both kind of been equal overall.
I mean, overall, I think the numbers would definitely back that up too. I'm just saying from a talent standpoint, I do think Zach Evans is the guy. But listen, having options here is not a bad thing. I think that it's going to be interesting because they looked bad against Tulsa last week. A Tulsa offense that makes sense that they kind of struggled with. But if you look at it, like where my concern is in this game is twofold. Ole Miss's defense has been really good this year. Like you talk about Kentucky getting Chris Rodriguez back. This offense has looked anemic at times. Their average margin of not victory, but their scoring margin in the first half of games is 0. That's a dead tie. And they haven't really played a murderer's row. It's been like Miami, Ohio, Northern Illinois, Florida, and someone else. They've been outgained in rushing yards by 3 of their 4 opponents, which is not a staple of Mark Stoops' teams at all. I don't think Kentucky wins this game. I don't know if the 6.5 points is fair because especially for a noon kick in the Grove, but I think Ole Miss is the better team. And the one thing we don't talk about them is, I mean, they were leading the SEC in rush defense and for yards per carry going into last week's game. Now they did give up over 6 yards a carry in that game. I don't expect to see that this weekend, and I think that there's going to be a lot of room for a lot of opportunities to be taken advantage of from a Kentucky team that has a lot of turnover issues, especially with Chris Rodriguez.
Well, anytime you can wear helmets with paint splotches on them, you definitely suit up and put them on if you're Ole Miss.
For sure, yeah.
But I don't know. I'll say, how good is Chris Rodriguez? Because Will Levis has had a lot of pressure on him these first few weeks, having to throw the football a lot. And, look, he's had a couple interceptions, but a bunch of touchdowns, a bunch of 300-yard games. If it's a shootout, can Jackson Dart's arm win it if he has to? There's a big question mark there, but they are at home. 3 o'clock Central on the SEC Network. It's number 17, Texas A&M at 3-1 Mississippi State. Upset. I'm hearing the alarm bells go off, Marler. Why are we not talking more about this game? A&M just beat 2 ranked teams in Miami and Arkansas, but my God, Mississippi State, Will Rogers, they get limited at LSU. They bounce back this week, 6 touchdown passes against Bowling Green. They're at home. The cowbells are going to be going nuts. And, oh, by the way, they beat A&M last year. Mississippi State, man, what are we missing here?
So, it's not an upset because they're favored by 3.5 points.
I know.
And that line's gone up.
I know Vegas says that. I'm just saying, I've read 3 articles this week. The Aggies are going to keep rolling. I'm like,
yeah, I don't. Well,
play.
I'll never forget being just hammered drunk at the LSU Auburn game a year ago and going to get another round of beers in the club section and being like, I just could not. I was so confused as to what I was looking at because A&M was losing to Mississippi State. And I couldn't figure out. I was like, am I seeing the colors wrong? Am I reading something? What is happening right now? No, A&M, like, it'll be interesting to see how they look after 3 very emotional games. You have the loss at App State, you rally the troops, and you beat a Miami team that isn't good, even though they were ranked 13th at the time. Then you beat a top 10 Arkansas team at home, and you do it in a way where you come back. The issue for me here is, like it's a great matchup in terms of Mississippi State's strength, obviously, is throwing the football, right? Will Rogers has been incredible. Last week, I think, was like his 5th game in his last 7 total where he had over 300 yards, 75% completion percentage, and 5 touchdowns. He's going up against an Aggie defense that going into the Arkansas game was only allowing under 4 yards per attempt. So it's a very good secondary. Mississippi State has scored in 15 of their 16 total quarters this season. They've been very consistent at putting points on the board. I don't know if A&M is built, even though we saw a week ago, if they're built to come back, especially not they're down another player, if they're built to come back from that. But I wouldn't touch this game with a 10-foot pole in terms of why is it a 4:00 game on SC Network?
That's what I'm saying. This should be a night game. This should get the primetime treatment, and everybody's going to be watching the CBS game probably over this one. But this is the one, and it was a throwaway line. You said loses one of their players. It's their leading receiver, Anaya Smith, has been he catches everything for them. So Evan Stewart is nice as a freshman, but man, Max Johnson already can only throw for 150 yards a game. Now you're going to take Anaya Smith away
against the worst defense in the country, against pass defense or at least. And then here's the other thing too. I didn't think that we made a big enough deal out of this, but the lack of creativity from Jimbo and this offense and production, they had 55 total plays against Arkansas for 344 yards. Right. Anaya Smith went down in the second half. It wasn't like he was out early. You know how many total players touched the football, had an offensive touch, whether it was a reception or a carry in that game?
I know Devon Achane. That was basically their whole offense, right?
Yeah, it was 6 total, and that's including the quarterback. And 47 of those 55 plays were either to Achane or with Max Johnson.
Wow. And look, I'm not trying to hate on the Aggies, but I think if you replayed that game right now, I think Arkansas wins it.
1,000%.
A&M just got, they're going in to punch it and go up 21-7 right before the half, and then the fumble and all that. I think KJ Jefferson learned from his mistakes, and that's going to bring us to our last game, the 2:30 Central Special on CBS. It is number 2 Alabama, number 20 Arkansas. Marler, I think there's been a lot of rat poison out this week because there's a lot of people saying, oh, Arkansas lost to A&M, so they suck. They got no chance against Alabama. And I'm going, wait a minute. I've seen Alabama on the road last year and this year, and Alabama's a different team when they go on the road and they leave those friendly confines of Tuscaloosa. So I think this one's close. I keep seeing this double-digit, 16, 17 points. I think and here's the thing. Arkansas better not be listening to any of their callers on talk radio this week because I've been hearing a lot of them oh, we suck. We're going to go 6-6. If Arkansas regroups, man, they can give Alabama their best shot. Had they not lost that game last week, I think game day would have been there
without a doubt
this week, and it would have been a way more hyped game. But do not sleep on Arkansas. I think they have a chance to pull off an upset. You don't think Mr. Drew Sanders wants to get after Bryce Young and throw him to the ground like he's done everybody else around the country the first few weeks?
Yeah, no, I think all that's a very solid point, especially with how Bama's looked on the road versus at home, and some of those numbers, especially. Listen, I looked this up earlier, and there's only been since 2017. There's only been 9 games. There's been 15 total games played by Alabama where you've had either a loss or you've won by 1 score or less, right? So 15 total. You get 6 losses. 5 of those came on the road or in a neutral site. They came from away from home. Of the 9 games, the 9 wins you had by single digits or 1 score or less, 7 of those came on the road. They have played much closer games on the road. And when you look at a scoring margin that's last year total, it was 19 points, it's average scoring margin. This year, it's even more. I think it's 37. It's not been like that on the road, especially against Power 5 teams. I will say Bama's going to lose a game, I think, in the next 3 weeks. A&M, Tennessee, or this one. This is the one you want to lose if you're a Bama fan. Well, but either way. But this is the one you want to lose because you don't want to have I I said this a week ago. If you're a Bama fan, what you want more than anything from Arkansas and A&M is a like down to the wire emotional loss, like that like gut wrenching loss for Arkansas. That's gonna be hard for them to bounce back from, and that's what happens. That's great. You don't want to have that be the case for Bama this week, with a win, and then play A&M, and then go on the road against Tennessee. I still like to think that Bama, I don't know if 17 points is what I would be betting on. I do think Bama wins by double digits. I think that they pull away because I think that Arkansas is not a one-trick pony, but I don't think they have enough on offense outside of KJ Jefferson for them to put Bama away, especially with that secondary.
And by the way, if you're going to lose any of those for Bama, lose the Tennessee game, because I know it's a rivalry and you've owned them, but it's always better if you're in the West to lose to an East team. You're still in that driver's seat. You win the West. You go to Atlanta. Blah blah blah.
You either lose to Sam Pittman or Vol Twitter.
Yeah, that's true. You guys will never. But keep in mind, what's Arkansas won or lost 14 or 16 in a row in this series?
Saban has never lost to Tennessee. To Tennessee or Arkansas.
Come on, cream rises to the top eventually, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
It's Chris Marler, College Football Uncensored podcast. So what do you guys have working this week?
Well, I just realized halfway through this show, a lot of the same stats I threw out we'll be having on our show. No, we've got a big preview coming tomorrow of the week ahead, and not just the SEC, but also some of the national games, and kind of giving out some of the other things. We get into October, man. There's nothing I hate more than a September Heisman, but we start finding out who's real and who's not. But yeah, we'll be doing a show tomorrow. We'll probably doing some winning and boozing. My dog will probably come in right at the end of the show, which is good. And that's about it. So just make sure you head over.
October, brother, you get those pumpkin spice lattes. That's when you're really
the worst
all season. He is Chris Marler. Thanks so much for the time, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Of course, man.
All right, he's Chris Marler, College Football Uncensored podcast. Join us every week right here on Locked On SEC. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Now you'll make your second listen. Check out some of our other great Locked On podcasts on the Locked On Podcast Network, talking your team every day. We got Arkansas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas A&M. We got you covered just about every team that you want covered. Georgia, Bama, Florida, we got you covered. Wherever you find your podcast, just search Locked On and your favorite SEC school. We got you covered there. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.